Well, folks, we've all heard the phrase, even a broken clock is right twice a day. And I do believe to an extent that rings true. Because think about the people that you most disagree with, or think that what they have to say is utter nonsense. Odds are they're going to say something at some point in time that you're going to agree with. And one person that I'm not going to say he is a broken clock because he's very smart, but what sets him apart is that he's a hardcore Democrat, but at the same time isn't afraid to say things that piss off the hard left. And we're talking about Bill Maher. And this week he made an appearance on The View.
Well, I had a different question, but it struck me that in the first segment you used the term woke, and you said that woke is what was sort of ruining everything. And I know that you're
No, I didn't say ruining everything. I said that's why Trump could get reelected.
That's why Trump could get reelected.
Yeah.
So the term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bashed.
Okay, note how she says the phrase co-opted by the right. She said that multiple times on air.
The term has been co-opted by the right. The term has been co-opted by the far right. Your argument for color blindness, I think, is something that the right has co-opted. And so
Not necessarily a good or bad thing. I mean, I have my opinions on Sunny Hostin, but just some rhetoric that I've noticed she likes to use.
because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the Black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words
and so
migrate.
why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing. Alert to injustice. Who's not for that? But words do migrate. Now, I'll use any term you want.
Okay.
Because maybe that is a word that's triggering, and so let's not use
Now,
that.
I don't understand how the word woke can be triggering, and I really hope that he doesn't feel like he has to walk on eggshells to appease people's feelings. But as we're going to find out, you never really know with Bill Maher.
But don't tell me that the left hasn't changed. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay? That was a joke. But,
Too dark, too dark.
well,
And I
maybe-
seriously hope she doesn't really think that's too dark, because that's light work compared to what's out there.
Women have no rights
Right.
in this place, and a lot of majority Muslim countries around the world. I mean, there's no equal rights as far as speech, dress, opportunities for education,
Nothing.
Reproductive rights, freedom from sexual violence, freedom from sexual harassment.
The
These-
LGBTQ community as well.
Yes.
you that too. But you throw around the term apartheid. There is a gender apartheid in a lot of the world, where women are second-class citizens, at best.
Are you at all concerned about the innocent civilians that have been collectively punished and murdered, largely
well,
children and women?
Of course.
Okay. This is typical Sunny Hostin fashion. The moment that somebody presents a side of the argument that doesn't necessarily contradict or invalidate what she has to say, rather it presents another side of the nuance, she will spin that to entrap them to make it seem like their argument is not what it really is. And if you recall a little bit back, I did an entire episode with Coleman Hughes on The View, and similar to what she was doing with Bill, Sunny was twisting Coleman's words, but Coleman was smart enough to see through that. It would be like two people having a debate about the BLM protests in 2020, with one person saying, Black Lives Matter, and another person saying, yes, and we have to acknowledge that during those protests, there was rioting, looting, burning, and innocent civilians died, and that should be condemned. And then the first person says, so are you saying that Black lives don't matter? It's a typical deflection tactic used when you don't want to acknowledge the other side of the nuance.
This is a war. Do you think Hamas needs to be destroyed? This is the question.
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
So how
Okay,
can we do
well,
that with a ceasefire?
All right, so Hamas needs to be destroyed because they are a terrorist organization who say openly that they want to commit genocide on the Jewish people, on the state of Israel. That's what from the river to the sea means. If I had any doubt that I was right about the change that's happened in the left, watching people protest for a terrorist organization like Hamas, that straightened me up pretty quick.
A lot of us were disturbed to see terrorist flags being waved on American college campuses and seeing this a generation that some I think genuinely care about the plight of the Palestinians. I think most Americans do, but some who seem to be embracing a terrorist organization over the nation of Israel. What do you make of this moment? What do you think it's a result of? How do we fix it?
Well, I mean, it's just astounding to me that they can't tell the good guys from the bad guys. I mean, just morally. You're for Hamas, just live in Gaza for a day. And I'm not talking about while the war is on. I mean, before the war. They've attacked Israel 5 times. They've started 5 wars since they were given that land back. They could have chosen to turn that place into any place they wanted to, and they took a lot of money that they took from the international community, and they spent it on bombs and guns and building tunnels. So if they need to be destroyed, how do we do that? It's a war. I don't know how to do that, and you don't know how to do that. Here's a way to stop that. Stop attacking Israel.
And stop calling for the annihilation of Israel and all the Jews. They're calling for the annihilation of the Jews. And so you can't really defend.
Now, I love how in this scenario, even people like Joy Behar aren't looking as sophomoric as Sunny Hostin is. I mean, when it comes to the host of The View, I don't really agree with a whole lot of what they have to say at all, except maybe Alyssa Farah Griffin, who does provide a nuanced view of things. But back to Joy Behar, because in this scenario, she isn't looking as much of a broken clock as Sunny Hostin. And again, when it comes to Bill Maher, I don't think he's a broken clock at all. Because as a liberal, he's called out woke culture before, called out pedos in Hollywood, and openly speaks to people on the right, including Governor DeSantis, Ann Coulter, Candace Owens, and many others. And when it comes to these debates, I'm never surprised when they get heated. I mean, that's to be expected with people who fundamentally disagree with each other. It's just that with Bill Maher, it seems that sometimes his Trump derangement syndrome does get the best of him, and as well-spoken as he is, sometimes it seems he doesn't have consistent standards. Case in point would be his appearance this week on Megyn Kelly's show.
I definitely think the right wing is much more dangerous. They don't believe in democracy anymore, and they threw their lot in with a sociopath named Donald Trump. So, no, he's not.
No, I just
Okay.
I want to talk about your feelings on Trump.
Yeah, well, there you go.
We have a lot of overlap, but you're definitely still
Sure.
going to vote Democrat, and I'm definitely going to vote Republican. But there's enough
Well, I'm definitely-
commonality to make us shake our heads yes when the other one speaks a lot.
So you're going to vote for Trump?
I am going to vote for Trump, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even understand that, and I understand that Biden is deeply flawed, but he does believe in our way of life. And I mean, I was the one who was saying from the very beginning, when everyone was laughing at me, that Donald Trump will never give up power, and he didn't. He still hasn't conceded the last election. You have to concede elections, and he hasn't conceded the last one. He's plainly not going to concede this one. He now has all of his sycophants around him parroting his party line, which is when they ask them, will you abide by the election results? Yes, if it's a free and fair election, which is another way of saying if we win. You really think this is a place this country should be?
I'm not going to defend the election denialism. I'm not one of those people who
But
believes
what's more
that.
important? What kind of country do we have?
How about my daughter not going into a locker room and seeing a man's penis?
That's important.
I mean, how do you get from there to there? I mean, I'm not knocking Megyn Kelly or criticizing her. It's just, how do you go from election to erection?
Boner.
I mean, she does have a point, though. Those are important issues. Women feeling safe in locker rooms and restrooms. And there are people who are willing to ignore that and to sacrifice that in order to project an image of wokeness.
How about young men on college campuses getting due process when they get
Okay.
accused falsely of rape?
Well, I think that's a false equivalency. I think these things,
What do you mean?
you can handle these things through the normal due process of our system. But if we lose the system itself, come on.
But we didn't. He
They
tried it. It failed.
Right.
I just love how Megyn Kelly is fearlessly calling out his hypocrisy here. False allegations of any crime, but particularly serious crimes, should be given the utmost importance, similar to how we as a country need to have faith in the electoral process, because both of those are fundamental to the pillars of this country. So in my opinion, while those are different realms, it's fair to say that those are comparable.
But I do think there's a difference between it was stolen, the nonsense with Dominion voting machines and all that, versus it wasn't fair. And,
What wasn't fair?
don't get me started. What wasn't fair?
Okay. Well, the
How
election.
about the suppression of the Hunter Biden laugh tax rate? Just for one.
Oh, for that's
Okay.
that's a stupid non-story. I mean, yes.
Says who? There are polls that show some 10 to 12% of the electorate says they would have changed their mind had they seen it, had they known about it.
It wasn't right. It wasn't right to suppress it, but nobody gives a.
I mean, he says nobody cares that it's a non-issue, but think about it. Hunter Biden has a slew of charges pending against him, including tax evasion, federal firearms charges, lying about drug use. Now couple that with the laptop, which appears to show Joe Biden doing corrupt business deals in Ukraine to protect Hunter, and it doesn't look good for Joe or Hunter. Now, I will say, if you haven't already done your research, form your own independent opinion on whether or not you think it makes any difference. But I will say that I do think that if people had known about it earlier, had it not been suppressed, it might have changed the hearts and minds of some people, at the very least. As the New Jersey-based Technometrica Institute of Policy and Politics conducted a survey of 1,335 adults, with only 11% believing it was fabricated by Russia, with 47% saying that if they knew before the election that the laptop was real, they would have changed their voting decision, with 2/3 of that number being Democrats. So, Megyn does have facts to back up her position, which Bill seems to like to ignore. Maybe it's because of his Trump derangement syndrome. But proceed.
I mean, this is just typical right-wing talking points. The evil Hunter Biden and the evil Joe Biden. And
Hunter Biden just now on the laptop was brought up as evidence of how the election was not fair.
I'm talking about the difference between this and something fundamental, which is that you have to respect who wins an election, or else you don't have the kind of country we've always had before.
You're not going to get me to say it was a great thing the way Trump behaved.
I don't have to get you to agree, disagree. You're obviously someone who looks at an elephant and a mouse and cannot tell which one is bigger.
I mean, you keep saying sort of I'm nuts because I don't see the difference between the elephant and the mouse, and I'm telling you I identify them differently than you do. Hillary Clinton, of course, is the original election denier. I'm sure you voted for her in 2016.
Well, she's not an election denier.
She absolutely was the OG election denier.
She came out before the sun had risen to concede the election to Trump.
And then spent the next 4 years saying he was illegitimate. He was an illegitimate president.
Okay, well, first of all, she didn't say he was an illegitimate.
Yes, she did.
You tell me exactly what she said.
She said those exact words repeatedly.
And boy, are there receipts to back up what Megyn is saying.
I believe he knows he's an illegitimate president. He knows that there were a bunch of different reasons why the election turned out the way it did. Jane, it was like applying for a job and getting 66 million letters of recommendation and losing to a corrupt human tornado. And so I know that he knows that this wasn't on the level.
You can run the best campaign. You can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
And we could break down the whole video because there's a lot left, but a good chunk of it was Bill just saying the same things. Trump bad, terrible for democracy, Biden the lesser of two evils, which is fine if he believes the last part to be true, but the thing is Megyn was trying to be the voice of reason, pointing out inconsistencies, but he wasn't having any of it. And that's what makes Bill Maher a confounding figure. Because he's very smart enough to call out wokeness when it needs to be called out. But then he has moments like this where he can't for the life of him understand why a conservative might feel the way that they do. And again, I'm not going to call him a crazy leftist. What I will say is that he's very much trapped in his ideological bubble, it seems, and at times that holds him back. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to this channel, hopefully I've earned a subscription. Here's some videos for you to watch in the meantime. Until next time, peace out.